Hi, my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel, Savage Reads. I have had a busy couple of weeks. My mother came out for a week, which was so wonderful, and she brought some of the coolest knitting books. So I want to show you those and show you what I am working on based on those. So she brought me these 3 books that are all by Ann Budd, and they are all knitting books, and I think they're so cool. So the coolest thing about these books is that if you have done knitting projects, you know that you find a pattern and then you need to knit a gauge swatch and you need to try to get yarn that fits the gauge, and you have to change your knitting needles and try to get into the given gauge for your project. All of the patterns come in multiple gauges and sizes. So you basically can take any yarn, start knitting, figure out what your gauge is, and then follow the pattern based on that. And you don't have to change your knitting for something else. You pick a yarn you like and you can make any of these projects. If it's a thick yarn, a thin yarn, if you have larger knitting needles, smaller, it doesn't matter because there are a range of gauges that you can work from. So the first book I'll show you is the Knitter's Handy Book of Patterns. And this gives you just some basics, like, okay, you can make a basic pair of socks. You can make a basic hat. And it gives you the options to customize it exactly how you want, but it gives you just the basic patterns. But as you can see, it gives it to you in all these different gauges and the sizes. And so you have a lot of leeway to make it in whatever yarn you want and to customize. So it does give you some techniques and different kinds of stitches you can try and different kinds of cast-ons. So we also have the Knitter's Handy Book of Sweater Patterns. And so it gives you some of the basic outlines. Are you going to be doing a circular yoke, raglan increases? Are you going to have a set-in sleeve? What is going to be going on with some of those basic differences? And then it lets you customize it. And so you can go in with whatever yarn you have and start making a sweater right away. Some of these are just gorgeous. I mean, I want to make that sweater. It's so pretty. So it gives you a lot of freedom. I think if you are making your very first sweater, maybe you don't want to start with a book like this. Maybe you want something that just tells you what yarn to buy, what needles to use, exactly what to do. But after you made a sweater or two and you want to be able to come up with your own ideas, you feel like you have a style that you want to go for and feel like you can kind of go based on that, this is really helpful. And now the one that I am working from right now is called the Knitter's Handy Book of Top-Down Sweaters, Basic Designs in Multiple Sizes and Gauges. And so I am actually making a sweater from this right now. This is technically the pattern that I'm following, but I'm not doing any of the color work. It is a little bit more of a basic sweater, but I wanted to get a feel for how this book works, how to figure out my gauge, do my own customization. I get to choose what kinds of increases I do. I get to choose what kinds of finishing I do. I'm hoping that after I do this base level sweater, I will feel more confident in being able to try out some of these many different patterns and ideas. While I like both of these, I think I'm more excited about the top-down sweater because generally I enjoy knitting a sweater top-down, but they both have some really great things in them, and I am excited to feel a little more freedom in customizing my own patterns. After looking through this book for a while, I was looking around at other knitting patterns and I started realizing, oh, I could buy that knitting pattern, or I could make the knitting pattern myself, something that looks similar. I go to a store and I think, oh, I know kind of how I could do it on my own. And so I think these are just really handy tools for anyone who loves to knit. So let me show you my project. So I am doing a top-down rounded yoke sweater. And so I got this yarn that is bamboo, which I am really excited about because it is so soft and it is one of my favorite colors. And we have the top. I have no idea how this is going to go fit-wise. That is another reason I am doing a test to see just how much ease I really end up getting and see if this fits okay. But the neckline will not remain like this. I will be going in and putting some ribbing at the top, and sleeves will come out each of these sides, and this is about the length I've gotten to. So I'm gonna go a little ways longer. It's customizable. I can pick how long I want it to be, put a little ribbing at the bottom, and then go in and do the sleeves, and we will see how this turns out. It's just such a soft, lovely yarn to be working with. I am really enjoying my time with it. So I am going to keep going on this sweater, and my next project, I kind of want to try to make a sweater for my husband, which might be a little ambitious. I hope that he actually ends up liking it, and I hope it fits. But if I can figure out the method on this, that's what I would like to start in next, because I have so much room for customization. So I am really enjoying these books. I do recommend looking at them if you're really into knitting. And thank you, Mother. That was just the nicest surprise. Now let's jump into some of the books that I have read in the last week. A couple weeks ago, I did finish reading The Count of Monte Cristo out loud to my daughters, and I did film a video about it and never got it put into a video, so I am going to go ahead and put that here. Now, my daughters and I finally finished reading out loud The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, and wow, was this book fun. It is a long book, but I have always loved this book. I was so excited to get back into it. It has so many elements of adventure and treasure and reflections on the nature of humanity. I just think it was really great. Now, as for the reading out loud experience, I'm really glad that I got the audiobook so that I didn't have to read all 1,200 pages out loud, but I could read aloud for a couple hours. If we were in the car, we could turn on the audiobook and kind of go back and forth. And that was really a good way to do it if you are planning on doing this whole book out loud. As for the ages of my daughters, the 5-year-old did not care about this book. This was over her head. She did not enjoy it. The 9-year-old, she loved it. She wants her own copy. She had a great time. So for that, it was a success. And I had a great time revisiting it. As an adult, there are a few things that stood out to me reading it that I did look at with a bit more of a critical eye, where when I read it as a young adult and a teenager, I just thought this book was perfection. As an adult, I recognize that a lot of the women characters are very stereotypical and do not have a lot of character depth. We also have the morals being very much of the day, which are interesting to look at, but this idea that you should be the hand of God in enacting revenge never really was overcome. It very much permeated the entire second half of the book, and you thought there was a moment that the Count had learned that that wasn't right, but then he reverted back to that strong feeling that he was God's tool to enact punishment. And through a modern lens, I don't feel like that's the right message you should take from this. I feel like there was a lesson to be learned, and instead of learning it, the Count backtracked a bit on learning it, and I wonder if it was the time and the audience, because I was hoping to get a little bit more of the value of forgiveness, the value of moving past things and not holding on to the hurt from past wrongs. And I just think that this book is not that. This book is very much that revenge fantasy. We have our main character who was wronged and brought so low, and suddenly he has all the money, all the wealth, all the power, all of the knowledge and skill that he is so much above everyone else. And it feels very unrealistic. It's anyone's revenge fantasy that they show back up and they can crush all their enemies. I don't know if the book really managed to move past that. There were glimpses of it toward the end, but I wanted a little bit more self-reflection and the ability to realize that manipulating people and their emotions and their situations is not healthy and not right. But that's not really where we ended up. Overall, I love this book. I thought it was great. It was just interesting to read it this time around, where I noticed some of those things that just felt a little bit off and probably were very much of the time and of the morality of the era. And I would be interested to know what your take is on that. If you have read this book, let me know in the comments down below. So this book was a recommendation from Scott at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, so make sure to check out his channel. I will link it down below. And this was Pictures of You by Emma Gray. And this book, I think, is one that is really good if you go into it somewhat blind, so I don't want to spoil it too much, but let's just say it kind of has that amnesia plot and a second chance romance. And at first I just thought, this is corny, but I'm kind of here for it. I want to see what happens. And it ended up being a lot more and really meaningful. So I think this book was really good. I do recommend it, but I think it really benefited from me not knowing what I was getting into. I just got in thinking, okay, a corny amnesia second chance romance. And watching it all unfold was really interesting. I think my only small gripe was that with the she's lost her memories trying to piece them together thing, you do get a lot of the story told through these flashbacks to the past. And I did find it a little frustrating at times because I thought that the real urgency was in the current timeline. And then we kept getting thrown into the past, and maybe I wanted her to discover more things in the present versus us finding them out through the story being told in the past. And so that was just my personal thing. I kept getting thrown off when we would get thrown back in a different timeline. But overall, I thought this book was really great, really meaningful. I do recommend it, especially if you like something that has a bit of a romance, but also maybe means a little bit more. This next book was a recommendation from the channel Triumphal Reads, so I will link that down below. And I read Death is Our Business, Russian Mercenaries, and the New Era of Private Warfare by John Lechner. So the description for this says, the disturbing inside story of how the Wagner private military company exploits a warring world. It also says that it is featuring exclusive interviews with over 30 Wagner group members. Death is Our Business is the shocking tale of the renegade militia that proved global instability is nothing if not an opportunity. And I thought it was really an interesting look how warfare has gone privatized. Some of these individual anecdotes were really interesting and really important to read. I did find it to be a little on the dry side, and I think it is because this is going in, doing the reporting, telling us what's going on, but I never felt like the narrative was super strong where I'm like, I can't wait to pick it up. I need to know what happens. And so I think this was maybe a solid nonfiction, but if you're looking for something a little bit more narrative nonfiction, I don't know if you're going to really be super compelled by this book, but I do think the subject matter is super important. I do think that people should read it. So I end up a little bit on the middle in this one where it was okay, and I am glad I read it. But I was never super eager to get back into the book, but I did find it very interesting. Now, this next book was a recommendation from the channel Raspberry Reads, and this is The Glassmaker by Tracy Chevalier. And this is an interesting book. We have a family of glassmakers that lives near Venice. It is following Ursula and her desire to work with glass and help her family, and it is following her story throughout the years. I don't think I've seen a book quite with this plot device, is that the time works weird just for the characters in the book. So we start out in 1486. Then we keep skipping ahead 100 years. And so the story just keeps going, but the setting changes. So what you end up getting is a really interesting portrait of Venice as a city and how it has changed over time. And that was really interesting. But plot-wise, I found it to not really help my connection with the characters or what was going on in the plot, because I knew that things were going to drastically change the next time we skipped time periods. I don't know if I thought this book was great or just kind of annoying, because as you skip through the time, you are suddenly thrown into a different context in the world, and to have a book that has some sort of time travel as a plot device but not really explain the mechanics of it just felt a little strange. So it was an interesting one, but I really did enjoy learning a little bit about Venetian glass and about the city of Venice and the changes through the years. I just think that it was such a strange one, and it's going to probably stick with me for a long time because it is just something a little different than other books that I have read. It just was an interesting plot device. And that is what I have read in the last week or so. If you have any thoughts on these books, let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you all on the next one.